Welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast, where we're all about sharing the forbidden secrets and slightly embellished truths about corporate cybersecurity programs. We're ranting, raving, and telling you the stuff that nobody talks about on their fancy website and trade show giveaways, all to help you protect your company from cyber criminals. And now, here's your hosts, Michael Rotondo, Zach Fuller, and Lauro Chavez.
Welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast. This is our very first episode of the podcast to go right along with the book that you know and love. And if you don't know it and love it yet, you will. This is your co-host, Zach Fuller, joined by Lauro Chavez and Mike Rotondo. And we are glad to be here today on our inaugural episode of the Cyber Rants Podcast to go right along with the book that you know and love, Cyber Rants. Check it out on Amazon.com if you haven't already. It is awesome. And we're pretty cool ourselves, so we say.
Well, we're cool. I don't know about you.
Well, yeah. Two of the three people on the podcast today are cool.
It's cool. Consider me Miles Davis.
Oh! Well, Cyber Rants, what is Cyber Rants? For those people that don't know anything about it, that haven't read the book, haven't seen the stuff on social media or whatever, which we don't do a lot of social media. So if you did see something, congratulations, you're one of the few. Not a lot of time for that stuff, but Cyber Rants is all about building effective, proactive cybersecurity programs. Our podcast is for people both with and without technical backgrounds. So if you're a organizational leader and you have this burden of responsibility to build a cybersecurity program, don't have a background in it, you're in the right place. And if you love this stuff and listen to all kinds of cybersecurity podcasts and want a different angle at it, or a different look at it, you're also in the right place.
You did it! Congratulations!
Why don't we dive into some of the disconnects between the cybersecurity industry and the people that need it the most? I think we have a lot to talk about there. That's really a lot what a lot of the book is about. There's a lot of people that are just unfortunately failing at the cybersecurity game, but they're not necessarily getting the right guidance either. Everybody's pushing different products and tools, pushing their own agendas. Hard to know what's what if you're not in the industry all the time.
I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what cybersecurity actually is, and that's part of the problem. Everybody's seen, Swordfish and the guy clapping his hands and the 5 monitors with the worm that crosses all 5, and he's, writing this code, and that's what, or it's guys sitting in their basement, hacking into things. Really, part of the reason we wrote this was to educate the public on what cybersecurity really is, and that once they're educated on it, they will be better practitioners of it. And I think that's really, one of the benefits of the book. And that's where the shortcoming comes. I think most people just think it's I plug in the right appliance, and then they forget the rest of it. The training, the policies, the procedures. I just read something today about the firms that are most likely to get breached are those without a proper privacy policy. And the average firm shares their data with 730 different companies on an annual basis. And, if you don't have a proper third-party assessment process or onboarding for vendors, you're just exposing data all over the place. And that's where a lot of the risk comes in. So that's my 2 cents on that.
So there's no Halle Berry or John Travolta in cybersecurity is what you're telling me?
Not that I've come across, but you never know.
Oh.
Wait a minute. I've just got to back the team up here. You're telling me Swordfish isn't real?
It is not a documentary as far as I know.
Cybersecurity is really more like the Death Star.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I agree with Mike. And there's a lot of organizations that I think certainly have misinformation on how to, I guess, accurately implement a proactive cybersecurity program. And it's not just these onesie little things. And relating it to the Death Star is a perfect example because the Emperor, if the Sith Lord, right? If he's the CEO of the company, then Darth Vader is his project manager. And if you remember he is, right? He is. He does not.
I just thought of a couple of specific project managers. That's when you brought that up. That's all.
Yeah, I did. That's why I brought it up. I was hoping hitting a little sticker in your arm. And so they're not technical, right? Vader's not technical. I mean, he can choke you, right, to a timeline, and that's what's important. Not that he really knows what's going on. And I don't know if you remember I should know if it was episode 3 or 4 where he shows up to the Death Star and it's not put together yet, and he gets off his ship and they're like, "Greetings, Vader," and he's like, this battle station better be fully ready. The Emperor sent me here to make sure it's built on time. And he's like, "I'll double the men and, get things rolling." And it's, their speed to market mentality is what caused their whole demise in the first place, due to a vent shaft the size of a womp rat.
That would be Return to Jedi, sir.
Was that Jedi? Oh,
that was a Jedi. And it's, yes, that case of not being completed properly, and the overconfidence of the Emperor / CEO, and of course the furry little critters on the moon, which could be your employees. I don't know.
They're evil.
That were the problem.
Yeah. You got taken out by Ewoks. And a handful of cowboys and cowgirls. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's relatable. I mean, every organization wants to put their new widget on the web so everybody can use it, and no one's looking at fundamental cybersecurity basics to in the DevOps process, or DevSecOps as they're calling it now, right? And in that process, on making sure that all of those security checks are being done prior to the push to deploy in production. And you're really just setting yourself up for failure by not doing those things.
Well, and the defense of all the leadership and people that don't have a background in cybersecurity out there, they're getting fed a lot of garbage from the industry too. And we are certainly going to make some enemies through the book and the podcast, and that's just fine. But we're making a lot of friends too. A lot of people, they're hearing a refreshing message, and that is, it's not just about buying more stuff, more tools, more dashboards, more. That's, I think, what a lot of corporate leaders are just led to believe. It's like, if we want more effective cybersecurity, then we just got to allocate more and more budget. But there's so much waste in organizations. We talk with security professionals around the country every day, and almost unanimously they're saying, "I'm sick of being stuck in meetings 6 to 8 hours a day. I'm not going to do the work I got in this business to do in the first place. I'm too busy navigating corporate politics to actually achieve the security posture objectives that I know we need to hit." And I mean, you guys know how that goes firsthand. That's one of the reasons why we do what we do today.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Documenting, the one piece of advice I'll give to security practitioners that are listening to this, that are roadblocked by departmental politics, is just document everything in emails and in white papers if you can. That way, when there is a failure, because you probably know it's coming, you're trying to make a change and you can't because of weird leadership things or budgetary issues, at least from a consultant perspective, right? You've recommended what is going to be best to resolve the risk, to reduce the risk, and you've documented that. So when they come back later, you can at least show them all the it's going to make a difference. It might save your job though when you show them all the documents that you had trying to explain to them why they needed to do this, and they still chose not to.
Well, if you have enough white papers, you got the foundation for a book, right?
Oh yeah, that's kind of how it happened, right?
It happened, right? Yeah, do a lot of writing. I mean, I know, Mike, you talk about that a lot. What's the most critical skill you could have as a cybersecurity practitioner? Writing.
Documentation is the most underrated, but the most needed. To be honest, it's really one of those things where you have to be able to do it, and no one likes to do it, and no one wants to do it sitting in a cubicle. But that's where it's incumbent upon management to, work with your resources, that, find someone that does do some writing, that does understand the process, and give them the freedom to write when they're comfortable. Don't set up arbitrary deadlines, but, some of this has to be organically, come out. I do much better when I'm sitting at home and with a scotch and listening to Jimmy Buffett writing my documentation, as opposed to sitting, trying to sit in a cube or an office or airport, or, I've written all over the place, trains. But, in a comfortable space, your documentation will be that more meaningful, that much more effective, and will actually get produced a lot more quickly.
wasted away in vulnerabilities. All right, is that why you put those words in those documents? Now I get it.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what's going on out there. I mean, I think there's, relatively speaking, the cybersecurity industry is still a young industry, right? So it's still trying to figure itself out. There's a lot to learn. Luckily, there's a lot of brilliant people in the industry, but it's been a little bit bastardized by some of the investment groups and such that create a lot of hype out of, I think, sometimes the wrong things. And when it really takes the boots on the ground practitioners. And one of the problems that we have in this country is that everybody's very quick to blame the shortage of cybersecurity professionals, right? They're very, there's just not enough cybersecurity professionals, and that's absolutely true, right? But in a battle or in war, like you've said it before, Mike, you fight with the army you have, not the one you want. And that's what we're faced with here in the United States, and so I think we have to look at things a little bit differently. We can't just say, oh, well, we're failing because of this, and this. Let's look at how we can succeed, and that's a lot of what we talk about through the book, and we'll be continuing to talk about through these podcasts, because there are a lot of great things we can do. And a lot of times what we see when working with clients, a whole bunch of different sectors, is that it's the fundamentals that they're missing, right? It's the basics. It's not the fancy stuff. It's not that they're, short on the latest, AI driven technology. It's more that they're just failing to even outline their basic processes, right? They don't even, necessarily have things like, regular pen testing or scanning or anything like that to validate their efforts. And what we see a lot is that most business leadership outside the industry has still not been introduced in the mid-market and smaller organizations. It's not been introduced yet to the concept of cybersecurity frameworks like CIS controls or NIST 800-171 or NIST CSF or any of that. They think of it as this kind of this kind of mythical world that exists out there in the ether. Well, it's really following a process. It's process driven, or it should be process driven. But what's happening is we see, people come in there, they get a MSP or some, IT person or something that says, oh, well, we're going to do this, this, and this, and that's cybersecurity, right? We're going to configure the firewalls and put antivirus on everybody's machines. Well, great, but that's not a cybersecurity program, and it's really about defense in depth. It's not about individual tasks. And so we'll be talking about that a lot through the rest of the episodes. As we continue moving forward, that's really the premise of all of this: is what can we do with what we have today? The resources that are out there and available. What can we do to make the most of those? Because that's what we have to do as a country, right? We don't have a choice but to make the most of the resources that we already have.
Yeah, absolutely. Like two things, right? If American cybersecurity was a football team, we'd be the Cleveland Browns. All right. And we're just, and also, Mike's certainly got more Star Wars knowledge than I do. So thank you for the correction on Return of the Jedi. But I will say, Zach, that in my opinion, security has been around since August 15th, 1983, because that is the time in which the Department of Defense put in the Trusted Computer System Evaluation Criteria, also known as the Rainbow Series. That was when the Orange Book came out that, talked about basic level security stuff. So I think it's been around a long time. I think it's one of those things where companies in the last 10 years have just began to want to acknowledge it.
Well, they haven't been forced to, which is part of the problem. And now with the, the litigation potential and everything else, they kind of don't have a choice anymore. Right. I mean, but I remember back in the early IT days when I was setting up networks and I was managing environments and we had to do the whole thing ourselves, and we didn't have anything called cybersecurity. We had barely any guidance, even from the manufacturers of the OSs, where we basically had to build our own programs from scratch to figure out what was best, what wasn't, and but yeah, that Orange Book from 1983, I think you owe us a geek dollar for that one, Mark.
Oh, well, yeah, I've run out of Greek dollars, but I agree. I think that, it was an organic thing, right? When, especially in the Department of Defense, we had a very specific criteria that we had to align to. And so it wasn't even a thought. It was, this computer can't be plugged into the network until it meets these specific criteria that have to be tested and then signed off on. We call that certification and accreditation. And, it seems like it's too stringent for most organizations to even pull off today, even being Fortune 100. It's like they're still not to that level of quality assurance, for cybersecurity configurations prior to any deployment. And I don't see any of the fancy tech now helping drive any of that. I mean, is it going to, is it going to stop spam from getting to your email gateway? Well, sure, that's fantastic. But what about are you investigating where the spam's coming from? Are you looking at these? Are you trying to develop, some form of lists to block that type of stuff? Or are you just relying on the technology to take care of it for you so you can go on and drink coffee and play ping pong in the break room? I mean, there's a huge difference between using plugging in a tool and letting it work, and then actually using the tool effectively and to 100% of its capability, so that you can get real data-driven metrics out of it that you understand. And you have to always be looking at that attack surface and trying to reduce the risk based on what changes you see from your telemetry. And sometimes that's many times during the day. Hopefully it's every couple of minutes, right, where you're getting this data and you can actually make actionable changes to the environment based on what you're seeing. And I don't see any organization out there that's to that level of I guess completedness, right, where they're really looking at the whole process.
Well, I think the problem too is that they're getting information overload because they haven't been tuned properly, right? So they generate these major logs and a ton of events. So what we came out with log aggregators. Log aggregators, some of them that we've worked with in the past, generate a ton of events and a ton of data, which is also data overload. So you almost need a log aggregator for the log aggregator to find out what's really actually real. And we, at that point, it becomes unmanageable. But I think you're right on the fact that we don't have the necessary resources. They're not staffed properly. No one's sitting there watching their log aggregator console all day long and trying to understand the data. Even in a SOC, I think you get overloaded. Staffed with a ton of people because they have multiple clients and blah blah blah. So unless you have a captive SOC that does nothing but watch log events and track them down and alert the appropriate people,
or even better, what I think is pretty hilarious is when the big VAR comes in and they install this intrusion detection mechanism, right? There's a lot of them out there, and they hook it into your ticketing system via API. So every time it sees an event, it starts to create a ticket, and then you just watch in minutes how many hundreds and hundreds of tickets they're getting to investigate these events. And it's just like they've assigned some intern just to delete tickets,
Right.
Well, hey, we're running low on time here. We have a lot to talk about over the next many episodes. So why don't we just cap it off with let's each come up with our final rant for the day, and we'll close it out. Mikey, what's your rant of the day? What do you want to tell people? Make sure they know.
I guess it's just make sure you staff your people properly and make sure you document everything you need to document. The documentation is the key, because God forbid someone gets hit by a bus or wins a lottery and disappears on you the next day. One of the things that I've seen is you come into these places with tools and the guy that managed the tool is gone and the guy that backed him up is gone, and all of a sudden you got no one to run this magic tool that you built your security practice around. So documentation is a big key.
How about you, Laurel?
Well, I got two things. First, I'll just say if you're a leader and you hired smart people to do smart jobs, trust your people and listen to what they're telling you, because you're gonna cause yourself a lot more pain if you don't trust the people that you hired. My other rant is about the documentation, and what I despise seeing is organizations that have one IT guy. They've got one IT guy running the whole network, and they're like, they don't want to spend the money to get an extra IT guy, and they have no idea the risk. And the truth is you need three, because just like Mike said, One's gonna get fed up with your crap because you're not listening to what he's telling you, even though you hired him. He's a smart guy. He's gonna leave. Then the next guy's gonna get lucky and win the lottery. He's gonna leave. Then the third guy's gonna be left there by himself, and he doesn't want to work there by himself because he didn't have any idea what's going on. He wasn't there long enough to be trained by the other two, so he's gonna leave too. Now all this fancy dancy technology that you spent all this money in the last couple of years putting in, you just thrown out the window because now you have to have a consulting firm come in or other people come in. And the first thing that a security architect or security engineer does when he comes in and he's the one security guy, he's going to look at all the stuff that they put in before him and he's going to go, well, I don't like this stuff. I want to put in this. And this works better. And I'm more familiar with this. And then you're going to be spending 3 times as much, and none of your tools this whole time have been 100% mature. So think about that.
Well, my rant is right along those lines. Cybersecurity is about people, first and foremost. It's not about tools, technologies, anything like that. And we need to put more emphasis on that. So we'll continue this discussion, but we will wrap it up for the day. Thank you for joining us. Rate us, comment. If you like us, great. If you don't like us, great. But let us know. And also, cyberrants.com. You can submit questions, anything like that. Just visit our site. And we want to hear your feedback. We will continue to put out great information. We got a lot of great stuff coming up. So tune in next time and have a great rest of your day.